The courtroom door in Gallatin County, Bozeman was heavier than any door had a right to be. I shoved it open with my shoulder and walked in, wearing the only gray suit I still owned that wasn't wrinkled black briefcase in my left-hand pulse, hammering in my throat. My name is Hadley Bennett. The plaintiff side was full. Mom and Dad sat dead center, arms folded like they already owned my life. My sister sat next to them with her husband, lips curled in that familiar half-smirk. My 19-year-old brother stared at his shoes like the floor could swallow him whole. Their lawyer kept tapping his fancy pen on the table, grinning like the hearing was just a formality before they took everything. My sister leaned forward and said loud enough for the whole room, "You can't even live alone. How are you supposed to manage money?" Mom gave that soft, pitying laugh she's perfected over the years. Dad shook his head slowly, the way you do when you think someone's too damaged to notice the knife. The bailiff called, "All rise." The judge, older woman, silver hair pulled tight. Sharp eyes took the bench and flipped open the file. "Counsel for the respondent, Hadley Bennett," I stood. "Your Honor," I said, voice steady, "I am Hadley Bennett and I am representing myself." You could have heard a pin drop. The lawyer's pen hit the floor. My sister's smirk died instantly. Mom's mouth actually fell open. Dad went purple. Only my little brother finally looked up, eyes red and wide. They thought dragging me to court over a $3.6 million trust was going to be easy. They had no clue. If you're watching this, drop a comment. Where are you from? What time is it there? And have you ever been underestimated by the people who were supposed to love you most? Hit like if you're already mad for me, and subscribe right now. Because this story is about to go absolutely nuclear, and you won't want to miss a single second. To understand why I was standing in that courtroom completely alone, you have to go way back to when I was an 8-year-old kid living on the edge of Bozeman. Doctors slapped the label high-functioning autism on me in 2001 after Mom noticed I never talked to other children at birthday parties and would rather line up my brother's Hot Wheels by color and wheel size than actually play with them. I could read a balance sheet before I could ride a bike, but eye contact felt like staring into the sun. Instead of fixing it, my parents shipped me 40 miles away to a special education school in Belgrade, while Kendall stayed in town, starred on the varsity basketball team, and got her picture in the Bozeman Chronicle every other week. At-home dinner conversation was about her latest game or her perfect report card. I sat quietly counting the cracks in the ceiling tiles, so I wouldn't have to look at the disappointment in their eyes. The only person who never looked at me like I was broken was my grandfather, Eugene Brooks. Every Friday after school, he'd pull up in his dusty Ford F-250 honk twice, and I'd run out with my backpack already packed. We'd drive the 32 miles to his 1,400-acre ranch outside Livingston, windows down Country Station blasting. He taught me how to read grazing leases, how to spot when the tenant was shorting him on head counts, how to keep a paper trail so tight nobody could ever cheat you. "Hadley," he'd say, handing me a fresh ledger, "the world is going to spend your whole life trying to convince you that you can't. Don't you ever believe them?" He made me initial every page we filled together. When I was 12, he sat me down at the kitchen table, poured me my first cup of black coffee, and slid a thick stack of papers across the pine wood. It was an irrevocable trust. He had taken out a $2 million life insurance policy on himself and rolled the 1,400 acres into it. I was the sole beneficiary when he died. No co-trustees, no oversight board, no family vote. Just me. He tapped the page with a nicotine-stained finger. "This is yours, kiddo. Nobody gets to touch it but you." He died 9 years later on a Tuesday afternoon in September, sitting in his recliner watching the cattle prices on the little kitchen TV. Massive heart attack, gone before the ambulance reached the gate. The will reading took place in a law office in downtown Livingston. The attorney read the simple bequests. First, Kendall got the vacation cabin in Big Sky. Mom and Dad got the retirement accounts worth about $420,000. Then he turned the page and said, And to my granddaughter, Hadley Marie Bennett, I leave the entirety of the Eugene Brooks Irrevocable Trust, currently valued at $3,600,000, consisting of a whole life insurance policy and 1,400 acres of deeded ranch land currently under long-term lease. I remember the air conditioner humming too loud. I remember Mom's hand tightening around Dad's until her knuckles went white. I remember Kendall's head snapping toward me so fast her earrings swung. I remember the look that flashed across Mom's face, shock, then something colder, something calculating. Dad cleared his throat like he was about to object, but the attorney kept reading the in terrorem clause. Grandpa had insisted on any beneficiary who challenged another beneficiary's share would forfeit everything. Mom's grip loosened. She forced a smile that never reached her eyes. That was the exact moment the temperature in the room changed. I felt it on my skin like walking from shade into sudden Montana sun. They didn't hug me on the way out. Nobody said congratulations. In the parking lot, Kendall muttered, "Guess Grandpa felt sorry for her," loud enough for the receptionist to hear. Mom shushed her, but the damage was done. I drove home alone in my beat-up Subaru, windows up for once, radio off, trying to process the fact that the one person who had ever truly seen me had just handed me the kind of money most people in Bozeman never touch in a lifetime, and the rest of my family had already started figuring out how to take it away. My phone kept buzzing with notifications from the family group chat I was rarely added to. Mom's message popped up first, 7 p.m. tonight at Kendall's place. "We all need to talk." I pulled into their driveway in the newer subdivision south of Bozeman, the one with the 3-car garages and the fake stone facades. Their Christmas lights were still up, even though Thanksgiving had barely passed. Kendall opened the door in yoga pants, and a Patagonia fleece gave me a quick hug that felt more like a pat-down and steered me toward the living room. Roger Finch was already parked on the leather sectional, shiny loafers crossed thick folder open on the coffee table like he owned the place. Dad sat in the recliner nursing a Coors Light. Mom hovered near the kitchen island pouring red wine into stemless glasses for everyone except me. Logan slouched on the ottoman scrolling TikTok earbuds and pretending he wasn't there. Kendall handed me a bottle of water cap still sealed and slid the 22-page document across the marble. "Family Protection Agreement," she announced like it was a birthday gift. I flipped it open. Page after page of legalese, but the meat was simple. I would immediately transfer the entire irrevocable trust into a new joint account. Mom, Dad, and Kendall would serve as co-trustees with unanimous voting rights. I would receive a monthly allowance of $2,500 for living expenses. The justification was printed in bold on page 5, whereas Hadley Marie Bennett has been diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder, and the family has concerns regarding her capacity for independent financial management. I felt the heat crawl up my neck. Kendall folded her arms. "Just sign it, Hadley. Don't make this harder than it has to be." Mom stepped closer, voice syrupy. "Sweetie, we're only trying to protect you. You know big money can be overwhelming." I looked at Dad. He wouldn't meet my eyes, just took another pull from the silver can. Roger Finch leaned forward, gold watch flashing under the recessed lights. "If you choose not to sign tonight, we'll file for guardianship in Gallatin County District Court within 72 hours. Once the petition is granted, you won't have authority over so much as a checking account. Your call." The room went quiet except for the hum of the Sub-Zero fridge. I stared at the signature page. 3 blank lines waited: Patricia Bennett, Stephen Bennett, Kendall Mitchell. My line sat underneath, already highlighted in yellow. Logan finally pulled one earbud out. "Can we just eat?" he muttered. Kendall shot him a look sharp enough to cut glass. I closed the folder. "I'm not signing anything." Mom's fake smile cracked. "Hadley, be reasonable." "No," I cut her off, voice calm but loud enough to echo off the vaulted ceiling. "Grandpa made the trust irrevocable for a reason. He wanted me to have control. Not you." Dad finally spoke low and gravelly. He didn't understand how bad it really is with you. The words landed like a slap. I stood up, folder still in my hand. Roger Finch shrugged. Clocks ticking. 72 hours. I walked to the front door. Nobody followed. As I stepped onto the porch, the cold Montana night hit my face. Behind me, I heard Kendall hiss, "Let her go. She'll come crawling back when she realizes she can't do this alone." I got in my Subaru, set the unsigned agreement on the passenger seat, and drove the 12 miles home with the heat cranked and my hands shaking on the wheel. That night, I sat at my kitchen table under a single bulb and read every single page again. The document wasn't just controlling, it was written to make refusal look irrational. They had attached my childhood IEP summaries, a letter from the special ed school psychologist dated 15 years ago, even a screenshot of me at 14 wearing noise-canceling headphones at Kendall's graduation party, captioned evidence of ongoing social deficits. I took photos of every page with my phone, uploaded them to a private Google Drive, and went to bed with the lights on. The next morning, I woke to 17 missed calls and a string of texts from Mom that started with, "We can still fix this," and ended with, "You're breaking your father's heart." I didn't reply. Instead, I opened my laptop and started researching Montana guardianship statutes. I printed the forms they would need to file, highlighted the sections about clear and convincing evidence of incapacity, and bookmarked every case where an adult with autism had successfully fought one off. Because I already knew they weren't bluffing, and neither was I. The mail carrier knocked on my one-bedroom apartment door in downtown Bozeman just after noon. I signed for the thick certified envelope from Gallatin County District Court, hands already shaking before I tore it open. 38 pages, petition for appointment of guardian and conservator. They had gone full nuclear. The allegations were printed in cold black ink. Hadley Marie Bennett is incapacitated by reason of severe autism spectrum disorder and is unable to manage her financial affairs or make informed decisions regarding her property. They claimed I could not live independently, that I required 24-hour supervision, and that the $3.6 million trust was at imminent risk of dissipation. Attached were exhibits. I had never seen a psychiatric evaluation dated 6 months earlier, signed by a doctor in Billings whose name I didn't recognize, declaring me nonverbal in stressful situations and incapable of managing assets exceeding $50,000. There were grainy photos of me at 10 wearing a bright blue therapy helmet at a county fair pulled from some old hard drive. Worst was the private Facebook post Kendall had made to the Bozeman Moms group 2 days earlier, trying to protect our late grandfather's legacy from someone who simply isn't capable. Prayers appreciated. 423 shares, 800 comments, most of them strangers offering sympathy for my poor family. My phone started blowing up. Former classmates, neighbors from when I was a kid. A text from an old coworker. Everything okay? Saw the post. Then radio silence. 2 days later, HR called me into the Billings office. The 142-mile drive felt like a funeral procession. The partner who had personally recruited me 3 years earlier wouldn't look me in the eye. "Until this guardianship matter is resolved," he said, sliding a letter across the desk. "We have to place you on unpaid administrative leave. Reputation risk, you understand." I understood perfectly. Back in my apartment, I sat on the floor surrounded by the petition pages spread out like crime scene photos. Every childhood struggle weaponized, every therapy note twisted. They had even included a bank statement showing I once overdrafted by $19 in college and labeled it "pattern of fiscal irresponsibility." Logan texted once, "Sis, stop making this hard on everyone." I stared at the screen until it went dark. That night, I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. The walls felt closer than the 680 square feet they actually were. I opened my laptop and started searching Montana case law until the sun came up. I learned that guardianships for adults with autism were rare, but not impossible. Courts usually required an independent examiner, medical affidavits, and clear proof I couldn't handle basic life tasks. I made a list rent paid on time for 8 years, senior auditor title, perfect driving record, no criminal history, no substance issues. I printed everything. I also learned something else. Once a guardianship is granted, the ward loses the right to hire their own attorney, sign contracts, vote, marry, or even decide where to live. The guardian gets total control. My family wanted to lock me in a legal cage and throw away the key. The next morning, I walked the 6 blocks to the Gallatin County Courthouse and filed my objection pro se. The clerk raised an eyebrow but stamped it. I paid the filing fee with the credit card that still had my name on it for now. Then I drove to the public library and spent 4 hours printing every financial record I had since age 18. Every tax return, every lease, every performance review. I built a binder labeled Evidence of Capacity and slid it into my safe. Because if they wanted to play dirty, I was done being the quiet kid in the corner. I started documenting everything. Screenshots of the Facebook post and comments. Copies of the forged psychiatric report. Emails from HR. I uploaded it all to an encrypted drive only I could access. And for the first time since the petition arrived, I felt something sharper than fear. Anger. Clean, focused, ice-cold anger. They thought they could reduce me to a diagnosis on paper and strip away everything Grandpa fought to give me. They were about to learn exactly how wrong they were. That same night the petition arrived, sleep never came. I dragged Grandpa's old metal lockbox out from under the bed, fingers trembling as I spun the combination he taught me when I was 12. The lid creaked open. Hundreds of numbered envelopes filled every inch exactly the way he always kept them. Receipts, leases, bank statements, every piece of paper he ever touched, organized like a library. I started with envelope 47, the one labeled Trust Original in his blocky handwriting. There it was, the full irrevocable trust signed at a title company in Livingston. Page 9 carried the in terrorem clause, underlined in red pen: any beneficiary who files suit or attempts to deprive another beneficiary of their share automatically forfeits their entire interest, with all assets immediately redirected to the contingent charitable remainder trust for neurodiversity support in Montana. Grandpa had added a handwritten note in the margin: "They'll try Hadley. This protects you." I kept digging. Envelope 112 held something that made my stomach drop. Bank statements from a separate savings account Grandpa kept at First Security Bank. Over the last 8 months of his life while he lay in St. Vincent Healthcare in Billings, too weak to hold a pen, someone had withdrawn exactly $180,000 in 12 separate transactions. Each withdrawal carried the stamp authorized by durable power of attorney and bore signatures that were supposed to be his. They weren't. The loops were too perfect, the pressure too even. Forged. I sat back on the carpet, papers scattered around me like fallen leaves. Mom and Kendall had been the only ones with POA after his stroke. They drained his personal savings while he couldn't fight back, then turned around and claimed I was the one who couldn't handle money. My hands shook so badly I could barely hold the phone. I texted Camila Ruiz, the senior auditor I shared a cubicle wall with in Billings. She had become my work friend over late-night Excel sessions and coffee runs. "Need a huge favor. Can you pull statements tomorrow without anyone noticing?" She replied instantly, "On it. Meet me at the side door 7 a.m. 7. The next morning, I drove the 142 miles to the office before the parking lot filled. Camilla slipped out in her puffy coat, handed me a flash drive, and whispered, "Everything from the estate file they sent us last year for tax work. I copied the POA withdrawals, too. Be careful." I hugged her so hard she laughed nervously. Back home, I overnighted the originals plus Camilla's files to a forensic accountant in Denver I found through the Montana Society of CPAs. His website promised 48-hour turnaround on fraud cases. I paid the rush fee with my last clean credit card. I paced my tiny living room checking email every 5 minutes. The apartment smelled like stale coffee and printer ink. I kept replaying Mom's syrupy voice at Kendall's house. Roger Finch's smug countdown, the Facebook comments calling me poor thing and tragic. Every notification felt like another brick on my chest. At 2:13 a.m., my phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. Logan. Sis, I'm freaking out. I have something you need to see. Can we meet tomorrow? Just us? I stared at the screen. My little brother had barely spoken to me since the will reading. He was 19 freshman at Montana State, living off the allowance Dad still gave him. Whatever he had must be big if he was risking Mom's wrath this late. I typed back, Main Street over easy, 9 a.m. I'll be in the corner booth. I finally collapsed on the couch, still wearing jeans lockbox open beside me like a loyal dog. For the first time since the petition landed, hope flickered. Not warm, not comforting, just a cold, sharp spark, enough to keep me breathing. The forensic report arrived the next afternoon while I waited for Logan. Subject line: preliminary findings, clear evidence of forgery. The doctor's signature on the psychiatric evaluation was lifted from an old hospital consent form and digitally pasted. The letterhead belonged to a clinic that closed in 2018. The withdrawals from Grandpa's savings account showed identical pen pressure across 12 different dates, impossible for a man on heavy pain medication. I printed everything, 3-hole punched it, slid it into a fresh binder labeled Exhibit B. Logan walked into the diner 10 minutes late, hood-up eyes darting like he expected Mom to appear from behind the syrup bottles. He slid into the booth and pushed a USB drive across the formica. "Before you open this?" he whispered, voice cracking. "I didn't know they were going to use my phone. They made me take those old pictures of you with the helmet. Said it was just for family memories." I plugged the drive into my laptop under the table. Dozens of screenshots, email chains between Mom Kendall and Roger Finch. Subject lines like, "How to make the evaluation look official," and "Timing the Facebook post for maximum sympathy." One message from Kendall dated 3 days after I refused to sign. "If the guardianship goes through, we split the allowance 50-50 after expenses. Logan gets his tuition covered. Deal." My brother's eyes filled. "I didn't want any part of this, Hadley, I swear. They said you'd never notice." I reached across and squeezed his hand. He squeezed back hard like he was 9 again and afraid of thunder. I paid for his untouched coffee, told him to lay low, and promised we would fix this together. By the time I drove home, the spark of hope had grown into something steady. I wasn't just defending myself anymore. I was about to turn their own weapons against them. For the past 3 years, nobody in my family had the slightest clue I was living 2 completely separate lives. Every weekday, I drove the 142 miles to Billings, sat in audit meetings, smiled at the right times, and came home looking like the same quiet Hadley they'd always known. But the second my apartment door clicked shut, I became someone else. I brewed a pot of black coffee, locked the deadbolt, and opened my laptop to Becker CPA review. 4 nights a week, sometimes 5, I studied until the numbers blurred. Regulation in the spring. Financial accounting and reporting in summer. Auditing in fall. Business environment and concepts over Christmas break, while everyone else posted family photos on Instagram. I scheduled each exam in testing centers that were deliberately far away. Billings 1 month, Helena the next, 96 miles each way, so no one would accidentally see me walking out in. I passed all 4 sections on the first try. 6 months ago, the Montana State Board of Public Accountants mailed me license number 12847. I framed it, then hid the frame behind winter coats in the closet. No party, no Facebook post, no announcement at Sunday dinner. The license was armor, and I wasn't ready to show it yet. The morning after Logan handed me the USB drive, the forensic accountant's final report landed in my inbox. 47 pages of damning detail. The psychiatrist's signature on the severe autism evaluation was a 100% digital forgery lifted from a 2017 hospital discharge summary and pasted onto new letterhead. The clinic listed as the examiner's office had been shuttered since 2019. The ink analysis on Grandpa's forged withdrawals showed identical pressure patterns across 12 different dates, impossible for a man whose right hand trembled from painkillers. The report concluded with the words, "Every defense attorney dreams of clear and convincing evidence of fraud and elder financial abuse." I printed 2 copies, one for court, one for me, and felt my pulse finally slow for the first time in weeks. That same afternoon, Logan texted, "Can we talk same place?" I met him at the little indie coffee shop 2 blocks from the Montana State campus. He looked like he hadn't slept. Hood up, hands wrapped around a cup he wasn't drinking. He slid another USB drive across the table. "This is everything from Mom's laptop. I cloned the drive when she was in the shower last night. I feel sick doing it, but here." I took it with steady fingers this time. "You okay?" He shook his head. "They keep saying it's for my tuition for the family ranch mortgage. But it's not. It's greed. I'm done." I reached over and hugged him right there between the mismatched chairs and the smell of burnt espresso. He was taller than me now, but he still folded into the hug like the scared kid who used to hide behind my legs at fireworks shows. For the first time in years, I didn't feel completely alone. Back in my apartment, I plugged in the new drive. Hundreds of emails, drafts of the guardianship petition with tracked changes from Roger Finch, spreadsheets calculating how much monthly care expenses they could justify taking before the court raised eyebrows. A group chat titled Project H, where Kendall wrote 4 months earlier, "Once the judge sees the fake eval plus the Facebook sympathy wave, she'll sign the guardianship in a heartbeat. Then we move the trust assets into the LLC, and nobody can touch us." Mom replied with a thumbs-up emoji. I sat back and let the rage settle into something colder, more useful. Over the next 10 days, I turned my living room into a war room. 3 binders color-coded red fraudulent medical records and forensic report. Blue forged withdrawals, bank records, power of attorney abuse, green emails, texts, and the full chain of conspiracy from Logan's drives. I added my CPA license, my last 5 years of tax returns, utility bills in my name, only lease agreements, car title, everything that proved I had managed my life perfectly well without supervision. I tabbed every page, created an index, and made flashcards of the Montana guardianship statutes so I could quote them in my sleep. I filed a motion for summary judgment and attached to my objection citing the in terrorem clause and requesting sanctions for filing in bad faith. The clerk accepted it without comment, but I saw her eyes widen when she read the exhibit list. Every night I rehearsed in front of the mirror. Not dramatic speeches, just facts delivered flat and fast. I practiced until my voice stopped shaking when I said the word forgery. I bought a new gray suit at the Macy's in Billings, the first one I'd purchased in 5 years. I hung it in the closet next to the hidden CPA frame. Logan texted updates from inside the house, Mom bragging to friends that the hearing day would be open and shut, Kendall shopping online for a new SUV once everything settles. I saved every screenshot. The calendar on my wall had one date circled in red, the hearing, 10 days away. I wasn't scared anymore. I was ready. I woke up at 4, long before the alarm. The apartment was dead quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator. I showered, pulled my hair into a low ponytail, and put on the new gray suit. No jewelry, no makeup, just the clothes and the evidence. I loaded 3 color-coded binders and the old metal lockbox into the back seat of my Subaru, then drove through empty streets to the Gallatin County Courthouse. Dawn was still an hour away. The parking lot held only a couple of maintenance trucks. I sat in the driver's seat with the engine off, watching my breath fog the windshield, rehearsing one last time. At 8:25, I walked through security, nodded to the same clerk who had stamped my objection weeks earlier, and took my place at the respondent's table. The gallery filled slowly. Mom, Dad, and Kendall filed in wearing Sunday best faces tight. Roger Finch adjusted his tie like he was heading to a victory party. Logan slipped in last, sat 3 rows behind them, and gave me the smallest nod. The bailiff called us to rise. Judge Elaine Hargrove entered, silver hair, black robe, no nonsense. She had a reputation for cutting through family drama faster than a hot knife through butter. Case 2025 DV 187 in re-guardianship of Hadley Marie Bennett, she announced. Counsel for the petitioners. Roger Finch stood all smiles. Roger Finch on behalf of the petitioners, Your Honor, and counsel for the respondent, I rose. Hadley Bennett appearing pro se, Your Honor. I filed my appearance and CPA license last month. A ripple went through the plaintiff's side. Mom whispered something sharp to Dad. Judge Hargrove flipped through the docket. I've reviewed the petition, the objection, and the rather voluminous exhibits filed by Ms. Bennett. We'll proceed directly to argument. Ms. Bennett, you may begin. I opened the red binder first. Your Honor, the petitioners seek guardianship over an adult with no cognitive impairment. Exhibit A is the original irrevocable trust executed by Eugene Brooks. Page 9 contains the in terrorem clause, highlighted. Any beneficiary who contests another's share forfeits everything. I slid the trust across the bench. The judge took it, eyes scanning. Exhibit B. I continued opening the blue binder. Forensic accounting report proving the medical evaluation attached to the petition is fraudulent in its entirety. The psychiatrist's signature is a digital composite. The clinic closed 6 years ago. Roger Finch shot up. Objection speculative, overruled, the judge said without looking up. Continue. Exhibit C, bank records showing $180,000 withdrawn from the decedent's personal account under a forged power of attorney while he was hospitalized. I placed the final green binder on the bench. And Exhibit D, emails and chat logs recovered from the petitioner's own devices detailing fabrication of evidence and intent to divert trust assets into a private LLC. The courtroom was so quiet I could hear Mom's breathing hitch. Judge Hargrove spent 20 minutes reading turning pages with deliberate calm. Roger Finch tried twice more to interrupt. Both times she raised a hand and he sat. Finally, she removed her glasses and looked straight at the petitioner table. Mr. Finch, do your clients have any explanation for forged medical records? Forged signatures on financial documents, or email discussions about manufacturing evidence to mislead this court? Finch opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Your Honor, this appears to be a family misunderstanding. There is no misunderstanding, the judge cut in voice like steel. There is clear and convincing evidence of fraud on the court. She turned to Mom, Dad, and Kendall. Mrs. Bennett, Mr. Bennett, Mrs. Mitchell, do any of you wish to explain these documents? Dead silence. Kendall stared at the floor. Dad's face had gone gray. Mom's lips trembled, but no sound came out. Judge Hargrove picked up her gavel. By the express terms of the in terrorem clause in the Eugene Brooks Irrevocable Trust, the petitioners have forfeited all beneficial interest. The petition for guardianship is denied and dismissed with prejudice. All trust assets remain solely with Hadley Marie Bennett. Petitioners are jointly and severally liable for respondents' court costs, and a civil sanction of $25,000 for filing in bad faith. The gavel cracked once. Roger Finch slumped into his chair like someone had pulled his spine out. Kendall let out a sound halfway between a gasp and a sob. Mom covered her face. Dad just stared straight ahead, jaw clenched so tight I thought it might shatter. I stood perfectly still while the clerk handed me the signed order. My hands didn't shake. My voice didn't crack. The judge looked at me one last time. Ms. Bennett, you are free to go. Good luck. I gathered my binders, nodded to Logan. He nodded back, eyes shining, and walked out of the courtroom without looking behind me. Outside, the sun had risen over the Bridger Mountains, bright and cold and completely indifferent. Justice tasted exactly like Grandpa always said it would: quiet, final, and earned. 30 days after the gavel fell, the consequences arrived one by one, quiet and merciless. First came the certified letter from Wells Fargo foreclosure proceedings on the 200-acre ranch outside Bozeman. Mom and Dad had taken out a reverse mortgage for $580,000 over the last decade, betting the equity would keep growing. Without the expected trust money the bank called the note. The sale date was set for spring. Kendall's husband filed for divorce the same week. Turns out the $420,000 in credit card debt. New cars, designer handbags, that kitchen remodel was in both their names. He walked away with nothing but his truck and a clean credit score. The Big Sky cabin sold at auction for less than the outstanding mortgage. She moved into a one-bedroom rental on the west side of town and took a part-time receptionist job at a dental clinic. Logan got the email from the bursar's office: mid-semester tuition payment bounced. Dad had pulled the plug. My brother dropped out of Montana State, packed his pickup, and took a ranch hand job 32 miles outside Livingston, $8 an hour plus a bunkhouse bunk. Every Sunday night, a new text appeared. "I'm sorry, Hadley." I read them, then left them on read. The full $3.6 million from the trust, now grown a little with careful investments, transferred into the Eugene Brooks Neurodiversity Foundation the day the judge signed the final order. I filed the 501c3 paperwork myself, named myself executive director, and set the mission exactly as Grandpa would have wanted: scholarships and coaching for autistic and neurodiverse adults pursuing finance and accounting careers in Montana. The first 5 recipients were already enrolled in community college bookkeeping programs, living on stipends that didn't come with lectures about what they could or couldn't handle. I bought a modest 2-bedroom Craftsman on South Black Avenue, blue siding, wraparound porch, walking distance to downtown. The day I closed, I hung Grandpa's old ledger on the wall above my new desk. My shingle went up the following Monday: Hadley Bennett CPA, Fiduciary Advocacy and Forensic Accounting. My very first client was a 34-year-old man from Great Falls whose parents had tried the exact same guardianship play. We beat it in 42 days. Mom sent one email, subject line blank: "Hadley, your father and I were wrong. We let fear and greed get the better of us. I know I don't deserve it, but if there's any way you could find it in your heart to forgive me." I read it twice in the quiet of my office, cursor hovering over reply. Then I dragged it to the trash and emptied the folder. Logan's last message came on a Thursday night, just a photo attachment: Grandpa leaning against the old Ford, squinting into the sun, arms slung around 12-year-old me, holding a ledger like it was made of gold. Underneath, 4 words: "I'm sorry, sis." I saved the picture to my phone, set it as my lock screen for exactly 30 seconds, then blocked the number. I didn't hate them. Hate takes energy I no longer had to spare. Forgiveness wasn't owed. It was a gift, and they had spent every chance I ever gave them. Some mornings I drive out to the 1,400-acre ranch, now leased to a young couple who send me quarterly reports and perfect rent checks. I walk the same fence lines Grandpa taught me to read, feel the same wind that used to whip through his white hair, and I know exactly what he'd say if he could see me now. He'd tip his hat, grin, and tell me I did good. That's enough. I still get calls from people all over Montana, quiet voices asking if it's really possible to fight family and win. I always answer the same way: yes. And you won't be alone. Because the little girl who once lined up toy cars by wheel size grew up to build something bigger than revenge. She built proof. Proof that the world can try to convince you you're less. But if you keep the receipts literal and figurative, one day, you get to hand them back and watch the whole story change. Grandpa was right all along. I could, and I did.